In this module's clinical practice management clinical pro, I want to talk to you about situations where there's an unsupportive spouse when it comes to managing a patient. Now, I can tell you, for practicing over 20-something years, if I see a patient come in that's chronically sick and their spouse is next to them and they're holding their hand and they're helping them figure out what to do, the outcome is dramatically different than a patient who comes in and their spouse isn't supportive of them seeking, let's say, alternative medicine approaches, and they really have to just keep things to themselves and not share any of their strategies and input with their spouse. And then they may even have a spouse that really makes fun of everything and downplays everything, and it really leaves the patient in a position where they just don't have that support. So what does that do to your outcomes as a clinician, and how do you deal with that? That's something that I really think it's important to talk about. So, ideally we'd like to have all spouses be supportive, but it just doesn't happen. And, there's some lines you have to draw when it comes to certain things. Like, I can tell you, unsupportive parents, when it comes to child development disorders, never work. If you have one parent that's not on board, it does not work. So that's an issue that's very serious. Now, if you have an unsupportive spouse, things may work, but it's going to be extremely difficult. And one of the things that I found is when I get to the point where I have an awareness that their spouse isn't supportive of their care, is, first of all, I like to encourage them to come in. In my initial evaluation of paperwork for a new patient, I actually specifically ask them, is your spouse supportive of the care of our approach? And if they say no, then I would many times request that they have their spouse come in for the initial exam and have the ability to ask as many questions as they want. If they can't come in for the initial exam, then I definitely want them to be involved with the report of findings. And at some point when there's discussion with the spouse, I'd like to say, and I really at some point need to connect with the spouse that's unsupportive and have a discussion and say, listen, I need to have my own relationship with you because I feel it's not to, let's say, your wife's best outcomes if she has to explain things to you that she doesn't clearly understand. I really would like to be able to talk to you directly and explain everything to you. If you can be involved with report of findings and plans and strategies and why we're doing things, that can make a huge difference. Are you willing to do that? And see what they say. A lot of times that avoids all the different types of issues that come up with the patient, because sometimes the patient will hear a report of findings and try to explain what's happening, and maybe you're saying, well, I really want to focus on reducing inflammatory foods from your diet, and they go home and try to explain that to them, and then their spouse is like, that's crazy, that's ridiculous, when did whole wheat become inflammatory? That's one of the healthiest foods you can eat. I don't know where they're getting that information from. That's quackery or something like that. Well, there could be a different discussion with the spouse saying, for many people there's no problems with whole wheat, but with your spouse, we found that they had extremely high antibodies, and we used a test called the LYSA. That's the gold standard to look at immune reactions to food protein. So she's having a very individualized, unique response to that food protein, and this is why we want to eliminate it. Her reaction may not be your reaction or other people's reaction, but this is what we're doing in a personalized approach, and we want to see what that intervention does. Do you have any questions about that? Do you have any questions about the testing? Do you have any questions about that? And then you have that discussion. And most times, just being available avoids the whole issue, and then the patient has an environment where they can have a better chance of getting outcomes that they need. You'll also be surprised that many skeptic spouses, and to be quite honest, it's usually a husband that is the problem. It's very rare that it's the wife that's a problem with the husband seeking care, but in most cases it's the husband. And a lot of times when that happens, and you have that discussion with them, build a relationship with them, many times they'll be your new patient. They'll understand that you're going through a logical process, that you're going through steps that they can understand, and that really changes everything. So what I encourage you to do is, when you have a patient, a spouse that's not supportive, Don't label them as something that's in the way of their care and that's terrible and that's bad. Try to develop open discussions with them and see where you can get with that. Sometimes it makes a huge difference on the outcome of the patient, and also many times you get a new patient when they develop a relationship with you as well. So something to think about. I hope it's helpful for this module. Thank you.